Hello, termites. How's everybody doing? We're getting to the good part of the book. That's pretty exciting. Tonight we have a little marble vodka from Colorado with a little cucumber in what? My water-free crystal glass that my mom thought I would need for dinner parties someday in my life. It still hasn't happened. But, maybe I'll live a long life. Maybe in my 60s and 70s and 80s, I'll just host a lot of dinner parties. Right now we got Tanya is running around kind of crazy, and her sister, she's having some problems with her career. LaCosta is her sister. This is when Dad was having problems in his relationship with LaCosta, and that about killed him. She hadn't been able to stand being around Steve and Jerry at Far Out. In the winter of 1979, Dad was manager. He was torn apart between worrying about me and my personal and career problems, and my sister's career problems. After she'd had 5 albums on Capitol, only one single cracked the top 5. Get on My Love Train was a big song. And she had 2 other top 10 singles, Western Man and He Took Me for a Ride. These albums were well received by the critics, but she couldn't very well sustain a career on 3 hit singles. It was obvious something had to give. LaCosta had heard Dad say that you can't really have one more than one horse in the stable, and she figured that the Tucker horse was always going to be Tanya. So she fired Bo Tucker. She fired her daddy. You go, LaCosta. He was almost physically ill from it. But he asked Bill Carter to take an offer to LaCosta. He wanted 10% of her earnings, which he would put into a savings account as a trust fund for any children she might have. LaCosta doesn't remember hearing about that proposition. I bet not. So maybe Bill didn't explain it to her, or maybe she was just so frantic out there on the road with nobody to help give her direction that she didn't understand it. And at any rate, she didn't respond. Those are very dark days for our daddy. Lucky for me, something came along that temporarily distracted Dad from me. And the Hag. He had a call from a guy named Mike Chapman who wanted to produce me, and he didn't want any upfront money to do it. Chapter 32, Termites. Mike Chapman and his songwriting partner, Nicky Chin, had sold well over 150 million albums worldwide. Wow, with acts like Sweet, Mud, Smokey, and Susie Quattro by the time they relocated from the United Kingdom to the United States. As soon as Mike got here, he jumped right on the charts as a producer of Exile's Kiss You All Over. Oh, I remember that song. Remember that? I want to kiss you all over and over again. I didn't think it was a very good song. I would have never remembered that band Exile either. They also found successes with Debbie Harry and the Knack. Mike's license plate read MC Hits. If I learned one thing, is not to pay too much attention to so-called track records. But Mike had one credential that interested me. He was the kind of producer who wanted to be intensely involved in every step of the recording process, up to and including in writing a list of songs his artist recorded. He also wants the artist involved. That's all I needed to hear to decide he was the next man to do my next record. When my dad asked what kind of upfront money he wanted, Mike wanted him right away. Nothing. If I can't produce a hit record on this girl, then I don't deserve a cent. He spoke my dad's language. Because he could be absolutely outrageous, he spoke mine too. He liked to sing and dance around the control room. He liked to work fast, much like Billy Sherrill had done, only with a more maniacal attitude. He'd say things to me like, "What are those horrible slacks you're wearing? Did your seamstress steal a set of drapes from the Beverly Hills Hotel?" Or, "I don't want respect, I want disbelief." Or, "Giorgio Moroder is the only disco producer. I steal everything from him." I don't even know what that means. Well, I had to love a guy like that, especially if I found out underneath that mania was a sweet-tempered marshmallow of a man who really believed in me, wanted input, and wanted success from me above all else. Life around Mike was an extension of the wild LA lifestyle, but without the destructiveness. Well, that's a good compromise. I'm not saying we didn't party, because we certainly did, but we weren't into drugs and we didn't fight. We just ran around having fun when we weren't working in the studio. He had no temper to speak of, and there was a childish sexiness about him. Mike loved to hop on a jet and head to New York to party at Studio 54 with Debbie Harry, the Knack, and Blondie. He was part owner of the La Dome in Los Angeles, and we went there a lot. La Dome remained one of my favorite hangouts long and after Mike and I finished the record. I guess the only real argument we ever had, if you could call it an argument, was about my signing up to drive in an off-the-road Jeep race in Riverside, California. I was the only woman that entered, along with guys like Gary Busey, John Schneider, Larry Wilcox, and Jan Michael Vincent. Mike could not believe I was going to drive in that event, and he was very vocal about it. Driving fast came natural to me. I mean, once I picked up a couple hitchhikers in Nashville, and by the next interstate exit, they were begging me to let them out. These days, I sponsor a NASCAR racing car, and I love to watch it fly around the track. So I piled myself into a Jeep and waved goodbye to Gary and Jan Michael and the rest of the boys. Even though I outran them and drove off in my prize-winning Jeep, Mike was very angry about it. The recording sessions were refreshing, and not just because Mike and I were friends. I had a great deal of input on Tearing Me Apart, from putting the band together to choosing the material to helping with the production technique. I was more involved than I'd ever been, and I was convinced we were making a good record. I do think Tearing Me Apart was a good recording, but country music, country radio thought otherwise. Wah, wah. In the meantime, Glenn Campbell kept calling to say how much he loved me and how one day we'd be together. I decided that day should come sooner than later. And on New Year's Eve in 1980, I foolishly took matters into my own hands. Oh, this won't be good. Chapter 33. I played a show in Palomino in L.A. that New Year's Eve, and then a bunch of my girlfriends showed up. Around midnight, when the show was over, we all piled in a limousine and decided to party all night. Someone sent a huge horseshoe bouquet to my dressing room, so we hauled that into the limo. I sat in the sunroof and rode down Beverly Hills, Sunset Boulevard, throwing roses to everyone, or in some cases, dancing down the street. It seemed like all of Los Angeles was out rocking and honor in 1980. Glenn had told me he was throwing a party at his house, but early in the evening, I was still smart and sober enough to avoid it. We partied everywhere in Los Angeles. Now, the interesting is, no matter where we went and what guys we wanted to pick us up, we were having none of it. I can be one of the boys and I can be one of the girls. That night, we were just a bunch of good old girls out on the town. We weren't out trolling for guys just for a big New Year's Eve. Finally, we decided to hit the Playboy Mansion. Well, why not? If it's open, go. Just go. My friend Audrey was along, and since I hadn't been able to start drinking until I finished my show at the Palomino, she was even drunker than I was. Oh, I've been there. My friend to show up at the show, I get off stage, everybody's totally hammered. I'm like, I was only gone an hour and 20 minutes. How'd all that happen? We pulled up in front of the Playboy Mansion, and the doorman asked for a name. I stuck my head through the sunroof with my horseshoe full of roses and around my neck and smiled brightly. Tanya Tucker, I said. Just then, Audrey stuck her head out of the limo door and puked right at the doorman's feet. Needless to say, Tanya Tucker and party were denied access. How embarrassing. You didn't even make it into the Playboy Mansion to get thrown out of the Playboy Mansion. You were thrown out before you got in. I decided we should get Audrey back to my house immediately, so we headed home where I cleaned her up, poured some coffee down her, and put her to bed. I've never understood, let's drink coffee when I've already vomited. No. How about just water? Then I called Glenn's house to see what was happening, because in her mind, the night is young. My pal, singer and songwriter Billy Burnett, answered the phone and told me to get my rear end right over. Well, that's all the invitation I needed. Perfect. We're on our way. It was around 2 a.m. when I decided I should make my big entrance. Wow. Before I left my house, I stuck an M80 firecracker in my pocket, because who the fuck doesn't? I know every time I leave this house, I'm like, ugh, where's my M80? Because something might happen. I might need to get some attention. Might need to scare some people. And she has a lighter because I'm sure she's smoking. Before I left my house, I stuck an M80 firecracker in my pocket. I walked in the house, and when I saw that Glenn was holding court in the library, I lit that M80, rolled it in the middle of the room, and shouted, Happy New Year, everybody! Just as Glenn whispered, Oh my God. The firecracker blasted off. Do I dare say it went over with a big bang? Of course, all my buddies like Billy Burnett and Michael Smotherman thought it was hysterical. Glenn didn't think it was all that funny. Well, I gotta go with Glenn on that one. It's not very normal to have someone throw an M80 in your family room for no reason other than it's New Year's Eve. My girlfriends and I waltzed into the kitchen, made ourselves at home. It's weird, but even with all that bizarre stuff going on, I remember thinking this was the kitchen of my dreams. Beautiful flowered tile, everything looking perfect. I was still sitting there admiring Glenn's kitchen when a very pregnant Sarah came in, that's his wife, and ordered me out of the house. Glenn had told me he and Sarah were waiting to separate until after the baby was born. Oh, come on, Sarah, I said innocently. I got all my girlfriends with me. We're just having a good time lighting fireworks off in your house. Why can't you get on the fun train, Sarah? And that's when you could still drink when you were pregnant. So why aren't you, maybe, Sarah, you should start drinking. She cussed me up one side and down the other. Obviously, Glenn had been running his mouth about our little fling. Either that or she'd had all the phone calls traced. Then Glenn came into the kitchen and cursed Sarah for cussing me out. She stormed out. I pulled myself down off the counter where I'd been sitting admiring Glenn's taste in tile kitchen. You got 2 months, son. In 2 months, you better make or break your mind up about me. Then we all piled back into the limo and went home. I'd had about all the New Year's festivities I could stand. 2 months later, Beverly Hills, her friend, not the city, called me at my house on Lennington and asked, guess who just filed for a divorce? Yes. It's getting really good, Termites. This book's getting better and better each page we go. What else do I have for you? Not a lot. Not a little. My friend Lewis Black is going to come here. Maybe I'll make him sit here right here and just listen. I'll read him. Maybe he'll be my first life termite. He could be, maybe I'll get him a little shirt that says first termite. He can actually physically sit here and maybe I'll make him read. Maybe I'll have a guest reader. Maybe we'll do that. Okay, termites. Tuck yourself in with a summer blanket. It's getting hot out there. Close your eyes. What are we going to say? I'm a good termite. I'm a worthy termite. And then give yourself a little kiss right on the forehead, and you'll sleep perfectly. Promise. That's all I got, termites. We'll see you tomorrow.